Hey, hey, hey. Welcome to Critical Q&A for this Sunday edition. Let's make sure that all is well. There we go. Okay, good. And hey, X-Cyan, nice to see you there. Excuse me. Little tiny bit of thunder here in Denver so far today to answer your first question there. Hey, Pa Mom. Always happy to see my critics showing up here for the Sunday morning live stream. Yeah, we'll just kind of get going here. I wanted to start off by letting you all know I did a presentation last night, a little small one here in Denver at the Secular Hub, on this topic, influence, the psychology of persuasion. This is I read this book this week. This was part of what we studied on our coercive control program, were bits and pieces of this, but I decided to take the whole thing on because I did a presentation on the subject of persuasion and manipulation and what's called the influence continuum, which is not from this book, actually. The influence continuum is a scale and chart put together by Margaret Singer and Janja Lalich, who, by the way, you will be seeing on the Sensibly Speaking podcast in the next week or two. I had a great talk with her. So the people who put that together published that in a book called Cults in Our Midst. And between that chart, that continuum, and the data in this book, I put this talk together, and it was quite a lot of fun. I haven't done a PowerPoint in a long time, so I put one together for that. And I thought, now that I've kind of told you guys what this was about, I wanted to know from everybody. Hey, everybody coming on board here. Happy to see everybody. I wanted to ask you guys if you thought this would be something you'd like to see in a live stream next week. If I were to arrange on Wednesday or Thursday to go live and do this little talk on how to manipulate people, how to influence people, would that be something you'd be interested in? And I was thinking maybe I should frame it as something along the lines of how to do that, how you can subconsciously influence people, as opposed to how to stay away from predators who are trying to influence you, right? There's this sort of what's going to draw more people. Right? And I think that putting it out there as how you can secretly influence others might be something that might draw more attention than protect yourself from all those awful predators. The very, very interesting thing about this, and the thing that when I get science-y and I kind of get into the academic stuff, and this is not an academic book. This actually is a very well-written, very popular book. But when I start getting into the research and the literature and stuff like that, I always start getting this kind of more cold, calculated view of humanity and people, right? And how how push button we are, right? We're not, this whole free will issue and what choices we have in our lives and what choices we're free to make. You really start, when you really, really get into the thinking of people and really trying to break down what is it that makes us tick, you really start seeing how limited so many of our choices and ideas are and how we sort of lie to ourselves a lot. But that's not a popular thing to tell people. Most of the time people want to be reassured that they are right and that everybody else is the problem. And I don't know that that's always quite the objective truth, Anyway, I always like to encourage people to, think while it's not illegal yet. But some people, you too can be a cult leader. Exactly. How to be a cult leader in 10 easy steps. Anyway, this influence stuff is a lot of fun. We had a talk about it on Friday night here on the live stream with Mel, and went over a few of these points, and of course the full presentation we'll get into a lot more. Oh, now this is an interesting question, Fabian. I might need you, thank you for this super chat question to kind of kick things off, as we are doing critical Q&A now, so go ahead and start firing questions at me. Would you mind using chapters in your videos like you're completing? Oh, other content depth is great. Oh yeah, I do on my Q&A shows now. I don't know if you guys noticed. Just to answer your question, Fabian, about 2 or 3 months ago, I think it was, I started breaking down in the description section of the videos the timestamp on each question and a quick little, couple word description of what the question covers. I'm not doing that for my live stream shows because live is kind of so fast paced and all over the place that I don't break it down that way for the live shows, but for the regular Q&A shows, I've been doing that. As far as other chapter stuff, I've noticed YouTube kind of doing that automatically, but so I didn't know that it was necessary, but I can definitely look at perhaps making some notes during my podcasts of my own as to maybe sections or things that might be, useful title breaks or something during the show, if that's what you're suggesting here. Yeah, I have no idea what my competing YouTube channels are doing. I don't go into that too much, but interesting. So thank you for that, Fabian. I'll see what more I can do on that. It's just so damn time consuming. Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, X-Cyan asks, I enjoyed your Sensibly Speaking podcast with John Atack yesterday. I always learned so much from the discussions. Where did you learn all that information, both you know? Research. I mean, a lot of the stuff on that we talked about in the podcast about moral foundations were from Jonathan Haidt's book called The Righteous Mind. The emotional data from Lisa Feldman Barrett's, theory of constructed emotions, and lots of other papers that I've read. I got well, here stacks of papers. These are all papers on emotion. What is emotion? And things like that, right? Behavioral processes, issue 60. And here's the Klein-Gina and Klein-Gina 1980s academic paper giving 96 different definitions of the word emotion. Stuff like that. I just plow through that stuff. And now I've gotten, by the way, this last week, I finally got my access to the literature again, to all the databases and information via the university. So I am super, super pumped about that because it's been a little bit of feast and famine trying to get my hands on academic papers since I graduated. And some people have very, very, very kindly helped me with that. You guys know who you are. And I want to thank you for that. But now I finally got full access again. So pretty happy about that. Yes, Fabian, of course, I would agree that not everything is equally interesting for everyone. Okay, so Anthony asks if Jane Does sue the church, would they have a shot? Yeah, Anthony, they are suing the church, and they do have a shot. There is a civil case that is now moving forward. Now that the Danny Masterson criminal trial is over, and he's been, convicted, he's going to get sentenced, I guess, coming up in August. And then the civil trial is now going to move forward, and it's going to go slow. I mean, the prediction, at least from Tony and I, is that it's probably going to move forward pretty slowly because Scientology is going to do everything it can in terms of pre-trial motions and all of that to slow everything down, starting with an anti-slap motion. Apparently, they've communicated that is their intent. So, that suit is against Scientology, the Church of Scientology, as a named defendant, and Danny Masterson as a defendant. So yeah, Anthony, yeah, so that's happening, and we are quite thrilled about that. But like I said, don't expect fireworks this year or even next year. It's a long process doing a civil trial against Scientology. At least they overcame the arbitration barrier. We're not going to have that bullshit coming up. So we are pretty happy about that. But But otherwise, we'll have to see how this rolls out. Yeah, I did see something about this. The X-Scion asks here, a Kenyan starvation cult preacher, Mackenzie, has been accused of convincing hundreds of worshipers to starve themselves. Have you seen this story in the news? I have seen the story in the news, but I didn't go deeper than looking at the story, so I don't have any other commentary for you on that right now. My attention has been on other things this week. I'm sorry. I was paying attention on Friday. We talked about that sex cult, that orgasm meditation cult, and how they have been arrested by the feds going after them for labor trafficking, and how excited we are about the fact that that is a non-religious cult, very NXIVM-like, that is now being prosecuted on lines very similar to coercive control and what that is with the labor trafficking and psychological torment and various things that they're charged with. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that rolls out. All right, Laura asks, question, Chris, where does David Miscavige live? Does he have his own home or does he live on a base? He has numerous homes. David Miscavige has apartment facilities or maybe even home properties. I don't know. I've never heard of him having a house. What I do know about and saw firsthand is he has apartment facilities on every Sea Org base or everywhere he goes. For example, in Big Blue, which I can speak to directly, the 5th floor of the big main building that has the Scientology sign going across the top of it, that building is the dorm building for all the Sea Org members on that base. There's 2 buildings there where all the Sea Org members live, that building and another one called Lebanon Hall, which I think is 7 or 8 floors. And the main building is what, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 floors, something like that. Well, the 5th floor of that building is dedicated to upper rank Sea Org members, specifically the CMO and above. RTC have their berthings there in that floor. It is the top flight, most cared for, nicest quarters on that base. And I was only allowed on that floor once when I was on the RPF, if you can believe it or not, because we were doing some renovations on that floor. It was the only reason we were there, and the entire time we were there, we had to have a CMO person watching us so that we didn't get off and engage in any shenanigans. Of course, so sorry about that. How could I have forgotten to throw the chat on? My bad. Thank you for reminding me. So Miscavige has an apartment that takes up half that floor. That's where I was going with all that, is half of the wing. One wing, in other words, of that building is CMO, executive, senior quarters. And the other half of that wing is David Miscavige's place. And when he's on the base in LA, that's where he will stay. He also has another apartment, apparently fully decked out, in the building behind the Author Services building, which is, I believe, on a Hollywood Boulevard near the Grauman Theater, the old Grauman Chinese Theater. That I think they've renamed now. But that about a couple blocks up from there is the ASI building, the Author Services building, and behind that building it's connected. There's some sky bridge or door or something, and apparently Miscavige has an apartment over there. I'm sure at the Flag Base there is a similar setup. Probably in the Fort Harrison or in some other building around that base, there is some place where David Miscavige stays, and it's kept, dust-free, perfect, perfectly cleaned and pristine condition every second of every day, so that if he pops in, he has a place to go. So that's, and then of course over in the UK, it's going to be the same thing. They have their castle building, which is their service building, and they have the St. Hill Manor, And then there's staff quarters somewhere around there. And Miscavige probably has a place he stays regularly. Maybe it was even built for him. I mean, who knows? But anything's possible when it comes to that kind of thing. Okay. Oh, yeah, there we go. The El Cadiz apartments. They bought the whole building, I assume, just for him. Yeah, that would be it. Okay, let's go ahead and see what else we've got up the line here. Sorry that I did not prep better to throw the questions on the screen today. That was my bad. All right, Bo Beats asks, do you plan on publishing a paper in regards to that emotional needs, moral compass, etc. talk you had with John the other day? It was very interesting. Yeah, eventually I do. I want to move the ideas that I presented in the podcast with John this week have to do with my kind of evolving concept of why we act the way we do. You know, it's after I answered the question for myself of why did Scientology happen to me and what was it that happened to me? That took years of work as I broke down right here on this channel. I mean, if you go back through my videos, you'll get the answer to that question too. Across all kinds of different, sort of approaches or viewpoints or whatever, right? In talking with psychologists and even neuroscientists about this stuff, really answering that question. But then the next question is, well, okay, so if that's what happened to me in Scientology and this is what happens to people in cults, why are people acting the way they do? What drives this behavior? Why do people go into these extreme mindsets? Why do people, what drives them to act the way they do? This model of behavior I put together, I think, is interesting and certainly explains things for me. And I broke it all down on the podcast with John this week. So I have talked with other academics about this model and how does one go about studying, researching, verifying, validating a model for use. What use would this have in a therapeutic setting? Could be quite a bit. If we break down emotional needs for people and start slotting in how they are satisfying in their life those emotional needs. A lot of people don't even know they have emotional needs. And they don't even realize that their morality comes from within and it has something to do with them, and that their moral foundations are something they can actually change if they so desire. They don't have to be stuck with, well, God said it and that's the truth and that's all there is. That there's a lot more to morality than that, and to our choices with that. And that's kind of some of what this model presents. So maybe it could be used therapeutically, maybe it could be used behaviorally, maybe there's other uses for it. I certainly don't want it to be used to sell things to people, and that tends to be what, influence psychology is mostly used for. It's to take advantage of you guys. And I kind of hate that, So I'm hoping that there will be future work down that line. I've got a lot of other I ain't promising anything right now because I've already made that mistake. I'm fulfilling promises right now and getting this tone scale video done and then the metering video. Those are my top priorities right now. I put that all aside in order to do this thing this last week, but I'm going to be picking it back up again this next week. All right, let's see what else we got here. If I missed anything, just throw it back in the chat for me. I'm going down the line to see what other questions you guys are asking. Okay, I just going down the list. Nobody home here asks, are you able to make ends meet from only your excellent video work across various media? Yes, I am. Barely, to be completely honest. And this is not, I'm just going to answer the question. I didn't put anybody up to this, okay? It is not the rich life doing this. I am barely making ends meet doing this work, but I can't imagine doing anything else. Every time I've ever thought about it, it just appears very, very, very unrealistic and impractical for me to do something different than this. But this is not, I'm not getting checks from Big Pharma or Big Psych or anything. The anti-cult battle, the education work that gets done on YouTube is the least remunerative for the most part, as opposed to, you know, cute cat videos and faces on tomatoes and music videos and prank videos and things like that. That's where people go and for whatever reason, pay tremendous amounts of money to support. The work I do gets very little support. So I have made it work for years now. I've added consulting to my repertoire. I'll remind everybody out there that is something that I do and I very much enjoy doing. And apparently I'm kind of, you know, I'm decent at it. So, so that can directly help people one-on-one who need it. And that's not therapy, that is consulting. Okay. I'm not, it's not even like a nudge, nudge, wink, wink thing. It's like, no, I ain't doing therapy. I'm doing consulting. It's not life coaching. I'm not being, you know, go get them. I help educate, inform, advise, listen, you know, that kind of thing. So that's kind of how I'm making a living these days, but it is, it's not the easiest life. Okay, next question. Xion, when a predator tries to use subconscious ways to get you, are they addressing what Scientology would call the bank? Huh. A Scientologist would think so, yeah. The reactive mind in Scientology is the collection of past traumatic episodes containing pain and unconsciousness that you have experienced, or any episode in your life that triggers those incidents of pain and unconsciousness. In Scientology, they call those incidents of pain and unconsciousness engrams. And those are supposed to be stored very carefully in a section of your mind called the reactive mind. And this, Hubbard says, has mass and energy connected with it, but we don't necessarily have to go there for this answer. Then you have your analytical mind, which Hubbard later said is basically just you, the spiritual entity, the thetan. It's not like you have another section of your mind that is the analytical mind structurally. It's really just you. And then you have various pictures that you create and machinery that you create with the mental energy to do things for you, make calculations, do stuff like that. So the subconscious impulses, the things that compel you to act in the here and now, come out of those engrams. They are the things that have force and can exert effort and even pain against you, in order to get you to avoid those same circumstances again. You know, you get bit by a dog and you're going to avoid dogs in some kind of fashion at a subconscious level for the rest of your life because these engrams are going to tell you to. This is the theory. Sounds somewhat sensible until you really start breaking it down and thinking about it and you realize it doesn't make any damn sense at all. A trauma doesn't work that way. It's very, very different. But Hubbard's assertions are what makes up Dianetics. And in Scientology lore, L. Ron Hubbard actually even tried to take advantage of these subconscious impulses that he said exist with his own marketing. This is why the book, Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health, has a volcano on the cover. That volcano is supposed to be re-stimulating or drawing on the trauma of the Xenu incident, in order to compel you to be drawn to pick up the book and read it. And there are other images that are used on other old Scientology books of guys in white suits with helmets and angels and a caveman and spaceships. And these images were very carefully worked out in order to re-stimulate your past trauma from old civilizations, past life stuff, again, to compel you to be interested in this Scientology material. So even Hubbard wasn't above using this stuff for his own gain. And of course, Madison Avenue would do the same thing if they thought, if Dianetics really worked, and this is how you could get people subconsciously or subliminally interested in things to buy them, oh, we'd be surrounded by re-stimulative material all the time. And Scientologists look at advertising material and that's how they describe it. They go, oh, these sexy women or men are just re-stimulating your sexual impulses, which are right out of your reactive mind. And this iconography or these symbols are somehow meaningful because they are re-stimulating some past life use of those symbols and that kind of thing. So kind of fun stuff. There's a pretty long answer to a short question, but yeah, they would definitely call that the bank. All right. Oh boy. All right. Well, I gotta pick up this one. Anthony asks, thoughts on Trump being federally indicted. Will we see a former president behind bars when he is gone? Will MAGA live on in some way? Okay, yes, MAGA is going to live on forever. That's not something that's going to go away anytime soon. Just like QAnon, it has gone on beyond Q. This is something that, is a normal sort of behavior for groups like this, where they coalesce around some leader figure, but then the leader gets taken out of the equation and the group carries on. They elect either a new leader, find somebody else to follow, or they just move on, and leaders kind of rise, as has been done in the QAnon movement. You can find various sub-leaders have kind of risen and taken over different factions of it, you could say. It's, pretty typical behavior. As far as my thoughts on Trump, I'll tell you straight. You guys know how I feel about Trump ever since he first announced he was going to go up for election back in 2015 or 16. I was like, hey guys, I see red flags here. I really, this is not even a political thing. I just see L. Ron Hubbard redone here. I'm really concerned about that. All my concerns sort of played out in real time, and as far as I'm personally concerned, January 6th was an attempt at an insurrection, and I was horrified by that. Now, as far as Trump and these documents, apparently serious people, Bill Barr, for example, other high-level government officials, even the National Review, the board of the National Review, yesterday published an article that said they were horrified by the charges in the indictment. And that even Bill Barr said if even half of this is true, Trump is absolutely toast. We're talking about nuclear level secrets. We're talking about nuclear response secrets. I mean, this is the highest level stuff you can get. And if this stuff was literally just sitting around in his bathroom and he was non-cooperative with giving it back to the government for months and had people moving it around to avoid agents going and looking for it, that is really serious. I can't sit here and say he's absolutely guilty of it, but his character tells me he is. In the same way, we can say Danny Masterson was guilty. I mean, we weren't there, but why do we all know he deserves to be in jail? Because we understand the character of Danny Masterson. I believe I understand the character of Donald Trump. I believe all of us do. And so I don't have any big, wide questions as to his guilt or not, but we'll have to let the process play out. In the meantime, we're already seeing both sides dutifully lining up and everybody losing their damn minds, and I'm trying very hard not to. It's just another kind of thing. But this having been a former president, it's a pretty big deal, and it should be a pretty big deal. And every single person who disagrees with it is going to say, this is disturbing because, we're setting a precedent of a former president being politically, ideologically prosecuted, which is total horseshit, and please stop saying that. Classified documents in your bathroom is not an ideological attack. I just, that's where we start getting into that emotional needs thing and people having to invent reasons why this was okay. It's not okay. It's not okay if Biden does it. It's not okay if Clinton does it. It's not okay if Hillary did it. It's not okay if Trump does it. And if they all did it, they should all go to jail. Okay? So that's how I feel about that. We will definitely see MAGA continue to live on, though. It's too big. There's too many people involved. And the struggles that are represented there are not just about a cult of personality around Donald Trump. There's a reason that happened that is beyond that guy. Those red hats signify more than that. And while there are racist components there, and there are some pretty awful stuff represented there with the neo-Nazis and that kind of thing, it's undeniable. Those guys are there. But those guys aren't all of it. There's other struggles and there's other reasons people are backing that, which don't have to do with that kind of awful. And we can give some of those people a break. But as far as Trump goes, I mean, if you're still following that guy, I don't know what to say. Okay, so thank you for asking me, Anthony. I hope I didn't lose half my viewers right now. All right, just got to say it like I see it. Oh, thank you for this, Love Fool Kitchen. This is a great response on that Miscavige question. Thank you, RR, for that super chat, by the way. So they did a floor of St. Hill Manor for the VIPs when they did the renovations 5 or so years ago, which is where he should stay, but I understand he stays at the Savoy in London and travels to East Grinstead. That would not surprise me at all. David Miscavige is always going to have the best of the best. I would be amazed if he flied commercial. No way. Absolutely no way. I would guess he would charter jets before he would even fly private. Yeah. Thank you, Juliana. I know it is a little frustrating sometimes with the money thing. Laura Waldy asks, sometimes people feel the only way out of something is suicide. Has anyone looked at suicide rates among current or ex-Scientologists? Is it common? I would not say it's common. It definitely happens. I think cancer deaths are a little more common. And I will remind everybody, Tony and I both talked about this site that has now been put up for people to go report deaths that they know about from Scientology. So check that out. I'm sorry I don't have the link here today, but look that up, because it's worth, if you do have knowledge of Scientology deaths, they're actually trying to put some data, a database of that together and compile actual statistics. Okay. Yeah, okay, so Honge Matador asked, do you believe the story told by Charlie Narn, who interviewed LRH on the Apollo in 1968, where LRH allegedly admitted that he felt trapped in the church that he created? Hard to say whether it's true. John Atack has commented on that interview as well and said that Hubbard admitted that he liked to get the smart ones or something along those lines, making the reporter that he was talking to aware that he knew this was a con and he was purposefully wrangling in people, the smart ones, the guys he didn't really like, that he would look down on. There's also this statement about being trapped in the church. I've heard of that as well. And do I believe it? I have a hard time believing it, to be honest with you. I know John endorses it, and Charlie doesn't particularly have any reason to lie, but I have a hard time believing that L. Ron Hubbard gave up the ghost, admitted what he was doing to a reporter on the Apollo. I just can't see how that's possible. But then again, L. Ron Hubbard was kind of all over the place. So could it have happened? Of course it could have happened. I need evidence. I need more than a guy's word on that, though. And I've always been doubtful about that one. My take. Okay. Oh, Pinball asks, is Scientology generally politically right-wing on economics, given the exploitation of staff and hatred of the state itself? Yes. Yeah, they are. Very, very ultra that way. Hubbard, in fact, is sort of all the way over to no taxes. No nothing, right? Like, I don't want any of that. It is an infringement on rights. I don't know. I mean, maybe this is so left-wing it goes back over to the right or something. I'm not even sure anymore. But what I can say is that Hubbard absolutely positively hated to kowtow or be submissive to any authority. He thought he was the ultimate authority, and pretty much that's kind of where it goes. All of his political or ideological statements go in that direction of escaping control, escaping being told what to do, having to pay any taxes for any reason of any kind. L. Ron Hubbard didn't want to have anything to do with any of that, and avoided it like the plague. It was all his money and that kind of thing. And that attitude rubs off on lots and lots of Scientologists. And there are attitudes of even exchange. There should not be a welfare state. There shouldn't be handouts. We shouldn't be helping beggars or homeless people. There is a very, very severe strain of that in Scientology. And that is part of what feeds a lot of the conspiracy theories there, by the way. All right, let me go down here real fast and make, okay, RR, thank you for this super chat. How can you tell when your church has crossed the line into destructive cult? Great question. And it really has to do with your choices and with what happens if you're trying to leave. Those would be your two big red flag, obvious things you can look at or ask yourself straight away. What choices do I have? Remember, Xenu Lalich and I have talked about, or you might have seen her discuss bounded choice, where the thing that cults do or predators do is bind you. You can only do this or that, or you can only do this, and there is no or. If you're finding your choices in your life, in your social networks, in your belief system, in your worship, in your words, in your actions, if your church is binding these choices and basically holding you down in some fashion, prohibiting you in an excessive way, getting in the way of who you can be friends with, stating who you cannot be friends with, what you can or cannot say in terms of language, in terms of what beliefs are okay or are not okay, and they become rather authoritarian about this. They start getting a little overbearing about it. Those are huge red flags, huge, which really should cause you to take a second look at what you're involved in. Because once you start giving a little, they only take more. This isn't a case of benign groups don't take from you. Destructive cults do. And they will demand more and more and more. And it starts small and gradually grows. This is how we are influenced. Then there is the question of what happens when you try to leave. Are they even Steven, no big deal, turn the other cheek, come and go as you please? Or is it, if you leave, there are going to be consequences, and they're going to be consequences you don't like. We're going to shun you. We're going to natter, or we're going to say bad things about you. Natter, Scientology word. We're going to, bitch about you behind your back. We're going to stalk you. We're going to make sure your life is worse as a result of you leaving. We're going to make you feel bad even for leaving. I mean, if they really pile on with this, if they engage in what might be called manipulative kindness, love bombing, right? If they're coming on real strong, these are all big, big, big red flags that you want to get the hell away from. There are other benign groups and churches and organizations out there where you can express your religious ideas and beliefs without having to deal with all that bullshit. So those would be the very first things I would say to watch out for or look for, RR. And thank you very much for asking me that question. All right, let's come back up here. Great questions today. These are really good. All right, here we are. Here's where we were. Okay, ChrisShelton. Hans Christian Schwartz asks, Judge Almeida seems to have set up Vicky Poboretsky for one hell of a bashing when the civil case resumes. Your thoughts? I am not sure how much of what occurred in the Masterson case can be brought over into the civil case, or if the civil case has to be tried on its own terms. That's the only question I have about transfer of information or events from one to the other. Any legal eagles out there would have to chime in on this one, because I don't know. But that question has been raised. I've seen comments already that seem to indicate from people that maybe that might not be possible. However, knowing what we know, somehow that information could definitely be gotten into that civil case if it gets in front of a jury or if it gets, to trial. And that would absolutely be a stellar example of how Scientology has been stalking and harassing the defendant. So clearly we're going to, that's got to get over there somehow. But I don't know how, I guess is what I'm sort of saying there. Okay. If I were offered the COB of Scientology position, would I take it? Yes, I would. So that I could dismantle it. That's all I would do. I mean, they'd have to know that's coming. If somebody put me in charge of Scientology, I would dismantle it. And I would return the money and as much as I could. And I would burn the PC folders, and that would be that. That's what I would do. Okay. Yes, Pinball does bring up a good point here. A while ago, someone asked if the Scientology cross was a sword, and you argued it likely wasn't, which I agree with. He did, however, write Excalibur, so I wonder about that afterwards. That was a good point that was made after my answer that I hadn't considered, right? Is that Hubbard does write a book called The Dark Sword or Excalibur, and there is a sword image, obviously, or a sword connection there with Hubbard and his early ideas on philosophy. So could the Scientology cross represent a sword? Yes, it could. Of course it could. But we find a much more plausible explanation, I believe, that's not reaching quite so much and is a more direct connection with the Rosy Cross, the Rosicrucianist cross, and its use in the Order of the Golden Dawn and by the Thelema, the Aleister Crowley's works, which Hubbard was so obviously and heavily inspired by, that it seems the connection is easier to draw to that. And I would still argue for that. But yeah, definitely could not ignore that good point on the sword thing. Okay, moving right along here. I hear you on that one, Juliana. Bolsonaro there. Okay, moving right along. Okay, question, the Paw Mom. Our family left the JWs years ago. My sister and I have major anxiety for as long as we can remember. She thinks it could be our life as a JW and the pressure and fear from them. Thoughts? Of course. The Jehovah's Witnesses are a destructive cult with an apocalyptic message of death and destruction for most people on this planet. And there is, rampant and excused child abuse in that group. And of course, there is shunning. There is a pushback on medicine, if I remember right. There's a lot of things wrong in the JWs that are traumatizing or could be traumatizing. And I would highly recommend, if you have the means or ability to, if you do have a major anxiety going on, to reach out for some therapy. It's out there, and there is anxiety and trauma-focused therapy that is really helpful in the right hands, or when you find the right person to work with. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a shopping experience trying to find the right therapist for you and the right treatment modalities, but I highly recommend availing yourself of that. If you can't, then I really, really recommend, and even if you do go get therapy, I really, really recommend also availing yourself of any educational materials on the subjects of anxiety and trauma. There's a lot out there. Body Keeps the Score. There's some very interesting stuff from Alexandra Stain, who I've had on my podcast about attachment theory and trauma and that kind of thing. Love, Terror, and Brainwashing is the name of her book. Very, very interesting stuff. So there's a lot out there, more than there ever has been, on how to deal with the trauma and anxiety from an experience like that. And so I would definitely nudge you in that direction, Paw Mom. All right. Oh, don't apologize for asking me questions, Pinball. He says here, third question, what do you make of extreme centrists? Most centrists don't tend to go for evidence-led policy, but what benefits establishment vested interests? Well, I would say that extreme anything is probably not a good idea. Would be my first answer on that, because y'all know how I feel about extremism. It tends to cut off critical thinking. Because you're so committed to a cause, you're so committed to an idea that you don't allow yourself to question it anymore. Or you just don't, it just doesn't even occur to you to think maybe there might possibly be something maybe possibly wrong with this. Oh no, not this. This is the most vaunted, incredible, perfect knowledge ever, right? Whatever the topic. I would push back on anybody pushing extreme anything. So there's that. And then as far as, evidence-led policy is difficult because everybody has their own sort of ends that they're trying to get to. And so what might be or might appear to be really good policy for one person is going to be heavily criticized or doubted by another, you know, in terms of where it's going to go, what kind of prediction for positive results it has, and what people think are positive results. You know, some people, like I guess these extreme centrists you're describing, don't want change. They just don't want anything to change. And, and one big problem with life is that it's constantly changing. The one thing that never changes about life is that it's always changing. So people, in a fairly, and this is no like, heavy criticism. It's just kind of seems like a pretty obvious observation that if you're trying to conserve things all the time, you're going to have a life that's going to have to get used to failure, because life doesn't want to keep things the same way. It wants to progress and evolve and change, and it will. Despite any efforts to hold it still, So anyway, so that's kind of a philosophical, I guess, answer. Okay, let's keep going here. All right. Okay, we did that one. Did that. Okay. Just looking for the next one here. Okay, I'll just talk about Bolsonaro now. Yeah, that's for sure. Thank you, Hans, for that. Yeah, I know. Right, Cyan, Ronald Reagan's campaign slogans, "Let's make America great again." Yeah, what's old is new. All right, JF has a super chat question. Do you think that the Church of Scientology will publicly break with Danny Masterson now that he's been convicted, or is it too risky for the Church of Scientology and Miscavige? I enjoy your work. Thanks. Okay, thank you for that first super chat, JF. And I will say that I don't think the Church of Scientology has much of a choice but to break with Danny Masterson, but I don't think they have to announce it. I don't think they're going to talk about it a lot. The public statement that they did issue, which we did a live stream on a week or so ago, very clearly avoided the whole thing about Masterson and was all about how Scientology was railroaded. And I think that will be the brunt of their efforts now, is just talk about how they're being victimized. Run a little Darvo on the public at large, right? How they're the victims, really, and how Scientology is what's being prosecuted unfairly here in total violation of the First Amendment. And I think that's going to be where they're going to try to go. As far as, in the long term or whatever, Dan Masterson is a convicted criminal. Scientology policy could not be more crystal clear about this. I mean, it just couldn't be. If you are a criminal, you are not allowed to do Scientology or be involved with Scientology, period. And if Miscavige wants to go cancel all those policies, well, okay, but they are there and they say what they say, and there are a few of them. They are littered throughout Scientology. It's not just one or two policy letters where Hubbard wrote this stuff. So it would be the most hypocritical thing they have ever done to continue to support Danny Masterson as a convicted felon. It just would. So I don't see the church, moving forward in a way that they're going to be supporting him. However, they're in a real pickle, aren't they? Because the entire Masterson family is quite tight. And I don't know where the Mastersons are at, that whole family, as far as if they're going to cut Masterson, Danny, out of the family now, or are they going to, are they going to go with what the direction the church wants, or are they going to, cut and run? Or are they going to be, present solidarity with Danny only as long as the civil case has to roll out, since their Church of Scientology and Masterson are both the defendants in that civil trial? Maybe they can't afford to cut him loose yet, but eventually they're going to have to. I just don't see that they have any choice. But when they're going to do that, or how they're going to do that, is what we will be watching so carefully for, because it's a real little landmine, minefield that they've got that Miscavige has to navigate right now. And I don't know, I'm told he's a pretty smart guy, but this is a difficult one. So a lot rests on handling the rest of the Masterson family to do what the church wants. And how successful they're going to be at that is anyone's guess right now. If they mishandle it, like Tony and I were talking about last week, then they create, as Tony was also discussing first with Danny Masterson's former stepfather, Joe Ricci. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Anyway, as he said, if they mishandle the Masterson family, they're going to have 5 or 6 Leahs on their hands, right? Newly created. And they don't want anything to do with that. They don't want that. So, but Miscavige so mishandled Leah, and so mishandles some of the other celebrities that have spoken up, and that he could end up screwing this whole thing up for Scientology. And if he does, good. That would be amazing if the entire Masterson clan decided on en masse, you know what, screw Scientology, right? Wouldn't that be amazing? Probably not going to do it, though. One wonders about what other blackmail material Scientology might have on those Masterson family members over the years. There's a lot of, in other words, there's a lot of circles within circles, at play here. It's very Machiavellian if you really start breaking it down. Okay, so great question. Thank you for asking that. X-Cyan asks, have you read the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov? What do you think of the character Harry Selden using psychohistory as a model to predict the broader picture of the future in probabilistic terms? This is such a timely question, X-Cyan, because I was just watching a bunch of videos about the Foundation series, and it was bringing all of it back from when I read it as a young teenager. I loved the Foundation series. Loved them. I thought they were brilliantly inspired sci-fi, and I loved Harry Selden and his whole plot and plan with the Foundation and the Second Foundation and the, what was it? The mule? Anyway, the mutant character. Anyway, it was absolutely wonderful stuff. Not exactly the most exciting read of books ever. Kind of a lot of talking, but really, really good stuff. I very, very much enjoyed those. It would be amazing if you could put together a mathematics of predicting social movements to a degree that you could be that sure of where things are going in 100, 200, 300 years. All right, let's keep going here as we're moving right along. Yeah. Oh, those Foundation books were so good. All right. Yeah, it's a tough one. Yonga Matador asks, when LRH named the brokers loyal officers, was he tacitly acknowledging them as his successors? Like all things LRH related, it's hard to get to the truth. It is. It's all just conjecture for us, because unless you were there and know the entire accuracy of the paper trail, who knows? Miscavige asserted when L. Ron Hubbard died, Pat and Annie Broker, who had been the ones who had been caretaking and living with Hubbard for all those years that he was off in exile up in Creston, California, an issue came out stating that they were loyal officers and basically on the track to take over running Scientology. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, Miscavige issues an issue that cancels all that and said they made it all up. And it was just a power play and they were trying to take over and they were never anybody and how dare they? And he got rid of them. And that was one of the key moves in Miscavige taking over total control of Scientology. And he had already been maneuvering things and to get into that position. And so he was not about to have Pat or Annie, come and ruin it for him. So that's how he took charge. Is that what L. Ron Hubbard really wanted? Who knows? L. Ron Hubbard was a pretty fucked up guy by the end. So who knows where that guy's head was at? I really don't know. All right. Yes, please do remember to smash that like button. Oh, my goodness. Joe DeCeppo, any thoughts on the Duggar thing? So many thoughts. First off, I want to refer you guys, if you do not know, on the cover page of my YouTube channel, the most watched video I have ever produced is an interview with Christiana Miner, a survivor of an IBLP family, a family that grew up with homeschooling from the Bill Gothard school, the ATI, and very, very heavily influenced by the Duggars. And my interview with her was absolutely fascinating years ago. After we did that interview, it took us about a year and a half to put it together, but she gave me, or we were working with all the homeschool books that she had, and she helped me, and together we put a video together breaking down Bill Gothard's bullshit and his 7 principles of biblical misinterpretation. And we break it all down as to how destructive and awful and cult-like this whole thing is, because Bill Gothard enabled people to create a family-level cult with the father as the cult leader, under this banner umbrella of protecting from the darts of Satan. The mother and the children are supposed to submit to the ultimate authority and will of the father, and it's his way or the highway, ultimately, in any decision-making going on in the family. So Gothard thought this was very godly and very Christian, and this is how it's supposed to be. Gothard was also a borderline pedophile who would sexually groom women, young girls, actually, teenage girls who he had around him. He would have them sit on his lap and touch them inappropriately and do various things, and it was pretty gross. And he avoided suit for this and criminal prosecution for this, and now he's dead, and the world is, frankly, a better place for it. Well, the Duggar family is all in on this IBLP methodology and blanket training and all this other crap. And we broke all that down in that video years ago. So when Shiny Happy People came out as a documentary the last couple of weeks, I was like, good, finally, from one point of view. But of course, from another, I'm like, excellent. Thank God it's finally getting out there in a mass media way, because I can't get my videos on Netflix. So somebody's got to go make a documentary about it, right? And there it is, and it's wonderful. It's this 4-part series breaking down, the whole Duggar awfulness, and it is awful. It's a little culty family, and the whole Quiverful movement and the child abuse that is rampant in that whole movement is unconscionable. It's disgusting what they get away with. So I am really, really happy to see the broad exposure of that. But like I said, at the same time, I'm a little bit like, what took you guys so long, right? Okay, so there we go. Moving right along here. You guys are awesome. Let's see. I did not know that, Joe DeCeppo. That is a very interesting comment you're making there. Did you know that Reagan and Trump's slogan was originally taken from Margaret Thatcher in the UK, who had the slogan, "Make Britain Great Again," which was a pun on Great Britain? I did not know that. But if I remember right, let me just check something here. Yeah, okay. Yeah, there we go. I just wanted to check and see if there had been an earlier use of it, but it looks like Reagan here in the States, it was Reagan, and guess that came from Margaret Thatcher. How funny and interesting. All right, moving right along here as we move toward wrapping up. Juliana asks, as a Scientologist and science fiction fan, as a teenager, young adult, did you read sci-fi as a fun intellectual exercise, or was there a part of you that saw it as nonfiction? A little bit of both. A little bit of both. There was, I mean, I grew up with Star Wars, as most of us did, right? And how does Star Wars begin? A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It's the past. It's not the future. And this very much aligned with my Scientology views growing up, because my dad was not shy about sharing things with me about intergalactic civilizations and how we had lived before, and how there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on in the universe that we don't know anything about, and how there are implant stations on Mars and, you know, spaceships and all this crap. I grew up with this. This is the kind of stuff I would hear from my family and from Scientology. So I was very much kind of skewing, you know, a little crazy in the direction of there being all of this stuff for real. You know, did I think all science fiction writers were writing out of their memories? I did not. No, I definitely did not. I thought future sci-fi was future sci-fi. It was what we were envisioning for our future, not necessarily drawing on from our past. I never thought, for example, about Star Trek as something that Gene Roddenberry was pulling out of his, you know, Thetan. I thought Star Trek was a, you know, amazing vision for our future. But Star Wars, on the other hand, right, long time ago. So, you know, it was a mixed bag for me in terms of reading. And I did read a lot of sci-fi as a kid. Lots. Yeah, that's it, the mule. I wasn't sure. I wasn't 100% on that one. Yeah, from the Foundation series. Oh, that was good stuff. Yeah, rumor has it that George Lucas wants Star Wars back. I'm just going to say right now, I hope he gets it back, and I hope he takes it back, and I hope he just cancels. I mean, wouldn't it be awesome? I think it would be awesome if he just canceled the entire 7, 8, and 9. They were such a travesty and such just a complete dog's breakfast of what he started. I would love to see all of that just kind of nullified, and Lucas puts a trilogy out that actually aligns with and respects the characters and the lore and the mythology of it. That would be absolutely amazing. I have nothing but disrespect for what Disney and Kathleen Kennedy have done to Star Wars over the last many years. Nothing. I absolutely despise what they have done with it. That's my own take. I know a lot of people have very, very other, you know, very different ideas. It's not even purely ideological with me. It's not a culture war point with me. It's a story quality point. It is, and it's, as I just mentioned, a respect for the characters, for the mythology, for the lore, all of it. I don't feel like modern writers of Star Wars have any respect for what came before them and think they can do better than Lucas did. And I'm sorry, but no. You know, you don't. It's similar to my problems with Amazon right now in terms of how they've dealt with the Rings of Power with Tolkien's work and with the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. I feel Amazon has hired people who do not respect that source material. They actually think they're better writers than Jordan and Tolkien. They think they can recreate these ideas for a modern audience instead of staying true to the lore, which is timeless and classic for a reason. It doesn't need to be rewritten. It doesn't need to be reimagined. If you have reimaginings, go write your own story. You don't have to pick from, you know, otherwise well-respected, well-established classic literature and break it all apart because you think you know better. Oh, you can tell I get really, really upset about this stuff, right? Because I really respect J.R.R. Tolkien. And I respect Robert Jordan and what he was trying to do with his stories. And I don't respect what these showrunners are doing with these properties at this point. So anyway, that's my, old guy take on that stuff. But I am hardcore, man. I am like OG Star Wars, OG Star Trek, and Tolkien is timeless. I mean, Tolkien is been multi-generational for decades and decades and decades now. And I think we need to respect these writers for who and what they were trying to do. All right. So, yeah, exactly, guys. All right. So I guess we will start wrapping up. Yeah. You guys are on the same page with me on this. So thank you very much for coming around. I'm going to remind all of you guys again. I think we will do, since it seemed in the comments that I was asking about earlier, it looks like y'all want me to do this little influence seminar this week, so I will figure that out. So watch for that. I will post early so that it doesn't just appear out of nowhere. I'll try to give a 24-hour notice on when I'm going to do that live stream. And it'll probably be an hour or two. It's there's a little bit to go over, maybe about an hour, actually, I think, based on the presentation I did last night. So, so watch for that. And watch for my show with Tony, which will come tomorrow morning or tomorrow at noon, where we will recap all this stuff on the Scientology front from this last week. All right, and with all of that, I will see you guys later. Thanks again for those super chats, by the way, guys. Very, very much appreciated. And if you want to sign up on Patreon, that would be awesome. Bye-bye.